So many voices rise in prayer asking for God's presence, longing for the Holy Spirit to draw near. Churches echo with hymns that plead, "Come, Lord, come, Spirit, dwell among us." Yet when the answer truly arrives, when the Spirit presses closer, stirring the heart with whispers to move deeper, suddenly hesitation appears. It is as though the very thing we begged for has now become a threat. The lips say yes, but the soul quietly trembles with not too far. Why? The answer hides beneath a universal human struggle, the fear of losing control. To surrender means to loosen the grip on the steering wheel of life, to accept that our carefully drawn maps may be torn apart by unseen hands. For many believers, this is the deepest unspoken dread. They want God's comfort but not His command. They want His peace but not His reordering of their days. They want His blessings without the burning fire that refines. This paradox is not new. Throughout history, humanity has always longed for transcendence but resisted transformation. In the desert, Israel cried out for God's presence, yet when the mountain shook and His voice thundered, they begged Moses to go up in their place. Centuries later, the crowds welcomed Jesus with palm branches. But only days after, their fear of losing power, comfort, or reputation turned their cries into "Crucify Him." The struggle is woven into the human heart, a desire for God, shadowed by fear of what He might demand. And so the Christian often finds themselves caught between two voices. One voice whispers, "Stay safe, don't risk too much, keep a little back for yourself." The other calls, "Let go, trust me, I am enough." It is here that spiritual warfare begins, not with dramatic signs, but with subtle hesitation. The Spirit is gentle yet relentless, pressing upon the places we hold tight, asking not for part, but for all. This is the essence of the journey we now begin, the path of surrender. It will not flatter us with easy promises, nor will it hide the cost. Instead, it will uncover the illusions that have chained our souls, expose the lies that keep us bound, and invite us to step into the terrifying yet beautiful reality of life under the Spirit's control. Imagine a ship on the open sea. The captain grips the wheel, convinced he knows the currents, the stars, the winds. Yet storms rise, waves tower, and the compass spins. In the moment of crisis, he faces the truth. Either continue clutching false control or hand the wheel to the one who commands the seas. That is the decision before every soul. And here lies the irony. What feels like loss is in truth the doorway to freedom. Surrender does not destroy identity. It restores it. It does not crush joy. It magnifies it. It does not weaken. It empowers. But this will only be seen once the first step is taken. Once the grip loosens, once the trembling heart whispers, "Not my will, but yours be done." As we open this story, let us remember, God is not waiting for stronger prayers, louder songs, or more desperate promises. He is waiting for surrendered hearts. The question is not whether He will come, but whether we will let Him in fully without reserve. And it begins here, with confronting the hidden fear that lingers behind our prayers. Lies that block. True surrender, if fear is the shadow hiding behind our prayers, then lies are the chains that keep us bound. These lies are not shouted in open defiance, but whispered with deceptive sweetness, shaping our thoughts until resistance feels reasonable. They do not come dressed as rebellion. They come clothed as caution, logic, even humility. Yet beneath their disguise, they suffocate the life of surrender. The first lie whispers, "You can do this on your own." It is the oldest deception, echoing back to Eden, where the serpent lured humanity with the promise of self-sufficiency. You will be like God. The modern version says, if you just try harder, read more, discipline yourself better, you'll manage. And so countless believers exhaust themselves in cycles of effort, wondering why peace never arrives. The truth is simple yet difficult. Self cannot crucify self. Only surrender to the Spirit brings transformation. Another lie says, if you surrender, you will lose everything. Here fear dresses itself in the mask of logic. What about your career, your family, your dreams? If you let go, won't God take them away? And so hearts cling tighter, convinced they must guard their own treasures. Yet history sings a different song. Abraham released Isaac to God and received a nation. The early church gave up comfort and gained the world. What God takes, He transforms. What He asks for, He redeems. A subtler lie creeps in. Wait until you're ready. It sounds wise, but it is deadly. Readiness never arrives because surrender is not about preparation. It is about trust. A soldier on the battlefield cannot delay surrender until the perfect conditions come. In the same way, waiting for an ideal moment only deepens resistance. The Spirit does not ask for a future version of us. He asks for us now. Then there is the poison of partial surrender. This lie says, give him most, but keep a corner for yourself. And so a believer obeys in public but holds secret habits in private, or yields Sunday but keeps tight control over Monday. The deception here is that God is content with almost. Yet partial surrender is no surrender at all. It is disguised disobedience. Like Ananias and Sapphira, who offered part while pretending it was whole, half-offering invites judgment, not blessing. Another lie strikes at identity. If you surrender, you will disappear. The fear is that handing over to the Spirit means losing personality, voice, or freedom. But true surrender does not erase. It fulfills. A violin in a case is safe but silent. In the hands of a master, its unique sound fills the air. Likewise, the Spirit does not strip identity. He awakens it to sing the song it was created for. All these lies, self-reliance, fear of loss, delayed obedience, partial offering, fear of vanishing are woven into the human condition. They appear rational but lead only to stagnation. The church pews are filled with lives quietly imprisoned by these deceptions, whispering someday while their fire flickers low. And yet truth breaks chains. The Spirit counters each lie with a deeper reality. You cannot, but He can. What He takes, He multiplies. The right time is always now. Almost is not enough. Surrender does not erase you. It awakens you. The battlefield of surrender is fought not with swords but with truth against lies. Every believer must decide which voice to trust. Will they cling to the whispers of self-preservation? Or will they dare to believe the promise that losing life is the only way to find it? This is the dividing line where faith either stalls or soars, and until the lies are named and rejected, true surrender will always remain out of reach. There comes a moment when all the lies crumble. No matter how fiercely we cling to control, life has a way of proving our weakness. The body grows weary, the plans unravel, the certainty dissolves. It is here, in the raw silence of exhaustion, that God often does His most powerful work. For surrender rarely happens in comfort. It is born at the breaking point. Think of Moses, once a prince of Egypt, confident in his own strength. He tried to deliver Israel by his hand, striking down an Egyptian. But his plan collapsed and he fled to the desert a shepherd stripped of status. Only then, 40 years later, at the end of himself, did he encounter the burning bush and hear the voice of God. His failure became the doorway to divine calling. Or Elijah, who called fire from heaven and defeated the prophets of Baal, yet soon after ran into the wilderness, collapsing beneath a broom tree begging God to take his life. It was there, in despair, that he discovered the gentle whisper of the Lord, not in the earthquake or the fire, but in stillness. His breaking point became the place of deeper revelation. Peter, too, knew this breaking. Bold in promises, quick with words, he swore he would never deny his master. Yet before the rooster crowed, he had disowned Jesus 3 times. And when his strength failed, he wept bitterly. But those tears carved space for grace, and on the shore of Galilee, the risen Christ restored him with 3 words. Feed my sheep. History is filled with similar stories. Augustine, restless in pursuit of pleasure, reached a point of despair before opening Romans 13 and hearing the call to holiness. John Wesley, striving through endless works, found himself empty until his heart was strangely warmed in surrender. Again and again, human pride collapses and God builds something stronger from the rubble. In our own age, the breaking point often comes quietly. A career crumbles despite endless effort. A relationship disintegrates despite prayers. Inner emptiness grows heavier despite outward success. These are not accidents. They are moments when God allows our self-reliance to shatter so that His Spirit may finally be invited in. The breaking point feels like death, and in a sense, it is. It is the death of illusions, the burial of the lie that we can manage life on our own. But beyond that death waits resurrection. For when strength ends, surrender begins, and when surrender begins, the Spirit takes command. Picture a jar of clay, strong enough to carry water but fragile when struck. Only when it breaks can the light placed within shine outward. Likewise, only when our self-made walls crack open can the Spirit's fire radiate through us. What seems like defeat becomes revelation. What feels like collapse becomes the very ground of transformation. Here lies the paradox at the heart of surrender. God does not require strength, He requires weakness. He does not wait for perfection. He meets us in failure. And though the breaking point is painful, it is also grace, because it strips away every false hope until only one remains: Christ himself. For the believer trembling at the edge of surrender, this is the hope. You do not need to rise higher, perform better, or hold tighter. You only need to reach the end of yourself. And when that moment comes, as it surely will, you will discover that the breaking point was never abandonment but invitation, an opening for the Spirit to do what you never could. While history often exalts Julius Caesar as the very embodiment of Roman might, Constantine's story casts a far greater shadow. Caesar won provinces, treasuries, and fleeting triumphs that faded with time. But Constantine, guided by a vision of the cross, laid claim not to lands but to the very souls of men. His conquest was not of marble cities or golden fields, but of belief itself, a realm far more enduring. And here lies the surprise. Where Caesar's laurels withered, Constantine's cross continues to blaze. For centuries, emperors rose and fell, yet Constantine's choice reshaped the destiny of nations. It was a new kind of empire, not built on legions but on faith. Constantine's vision was not just a private revelation, it became a rallying cry. The cross was emblazoned on the shields of his soldiers, a symbol turning fear into fire. Ancient Rome had seen countless banners fluttering in battle, but never before had a sign of sacrifice been wielded as a weapon of triumph. In this paradox lay the true genius of Constantine. He transformed an emblem of execution into the standard of victory. In 312 AD, at the Milvian Bridge, history bent on a single clash. Against Maxentius, Constantine fought not only an enemy but doubt itself. Within this sign conquer blazing in his mind, his legions advanced. The Tiber swallowed Maxentius, and the empire itself seemed to bow before the cross. It was more than a battle. It was a turning point where steel met spirit and spirit prevailed. Once an outlawed faith, Christianity suddenly found itself at the heart of power. Constantine's embrace of the church was not tentative, it was revolutionary. He did not merely tolerate Christians, he elevated them. He poured imperial resources into building basilicas, granted privileges to clergy, and shifted the moral compass of Rome itself. For centuries, Christians had been hunted. Now they stood beside the throne. In 313 AD, a document echoed through eternity, the Edict of Milan. It proclaimed religious freedom, not just for Christians, but for all. Imagine the shock of the age. In a world accustomed to persecution, suddenly faith was free. Constantine's decree did not simply change laws. It reshaped consciences. It was the first breath of a new world, where belief could flourish without chains. Constantine did not stop at proclamations. He rebuilt Rome in faith's image, adorning it with grand basilicas like the original St. Peter's. Stone by stone, he carved Christianity into the skyline. Cities bore his mark, but more importantly, so did centuries. Constantine became not just emperor of Rome, but architect of Christendom. His hand guided the foundations of a civilization that would outlast empires. At the twilight of his reign, Constantine stood not merely as a ruler, but as a legend. He had altered the fate of millions, setting a course no Caesar had ever dared imagine. Where others sought immortal glory in marble statues, Constantine's immortality lived in faith itself. His story was not simply a victory but a vision, the vision that lifted a persecuted sect into the heart of empire, and from there, into the heartbeat of history.